Model Context Protocol, or MCP, is a new jargon that was introduced by Anthropic. It allows LLMs like Claude to talk to external applications or services like Slack, Google Drive, GitHub, or even trading applications like Zerodha. In today's video, we're building an MCP server on top of Zerodha so that by the end of the video, I'm able to use an LLM like Claude to directly place trades in my Zerodha account. I can ask Claude to buy 20 stocks of Zerodha, let's say, or Zerodha isn't a public company, 20 stocks of Tata, or maybe the best performing stock in the last 20 minutes. And it will find the best performing stock in the last 20 minutes and place an order. All of this is possible because you can expose Zerodha's APIs, Zerodha's live trading feed to the LLM by using a layer in the middle. That layer is called the MCP. More technically, the video is going to be divided into 5 parts. We'll first understand what is MCP, why did Anthropic introduce it, what problem does it solve. Then we'll go through various MCP servers that already exist. We are creating one today for Zerodha, but there are like 500 applications that have already created these. It's a hot market right now. Then we'll simply do API trading in Zerodha, nothing related to AI, nothing related to MCPs, just trying to create some trades on my Zerodha account, buy some stocks, sell some stocks using a simple Node.js client. Then we'll understand how do you create your own MCP server for your own services or maybe for another service like Zerodha that exposes the trade functionality to an LLM. We'll understand what are tools and what are resources in an MCP server. And lastly, we'll connect the MCP server from a client, the client in our case being Claude, but there are various MCP clients that exist. You can talk to Zerodha now from Cursor directly if you feel like it, although probably not the best use case. But let's say in the future, even OpenAI or a different LLM introduces MCP functionality. So you can choose the LLM of your choice and directly trade on Zerodha. Buy stocks, sell stocks, figure out what are the best stocks performing in the last 20 minutes, so on and so forth. Without any further ado, let's get into the first section. Let's understand what is an MCP server. All right, before we get into MCP servers, let's understand how traditional client-server communication happens. If this is me on Zerodha and I want to buy a stock of HDFC Bank, I have around 10,000 rupees in my bank account or my Zerodha account. I can click on buy. I can select the quantity. Let's say I want to buy one stock of Zerodha, and this is the price that I want to buy it at. Usually this price is the current price of the HDFC Bank stock. So if I click on buy, I'll get one stock of HDFC and my equity will go down to whatever 7,700 because I'll buy it for around 2,000 rupees. This is my web browser directly interacting with the Zerodha backend. So if I click on this button, let me quickly show you the network tab. If I click on the buy button, you'll see a request that goes out to kite.zerodha.com/oms/orders/regular. That means I'm trying to place an order. And when that order gets filled, I see this pop up on my screen. Now I only have 7,700 rupees in my bank or in my Zerodha account, and I have one stock of holding over here. So if I click on orders, you can see I have one quantity of HDFC Bank that I bought at 1968.20 rupees. This is my browser interacting with the Zerodha backend through the HTTP protocol. Fairly standard how frontends interact with backend. You could replace this with a mobile application. The problem is, if you want to do the same thing via Claude, let's say, I want to go to claude.ai and I want to just write, hey, can you buy one stock of Axis on my Zerodha account? There's no easy way to do that. There are two challenges here. The first challenge is authentication. How does Claude have access to my Zerodha account? That's a different challenge. We can come to it later. The second challenge is, how does Claude know what API endpoints to hit to buy one stock of Axis? First question, why would you want to do this? The simpler answer is you might want to do this because you might want to talk to Zerodha in natural language, which basically means, I could write something like one stock of the bank where I have most of my money, which is Axis. So Claude can figure out English language and figure out that you're trying to buy Axis or HDFC and then place that order. So the onus is on the LLM to figure out what stock you're trying to buy or how much quantity you're trying to buy. I might say something like, hey, can you convert half of my INR amount into HDFC Bank? And if Claude somehow knows my Zerodha bank account balance, it'll be able to understand that half of the balance is 5,000 rupees. It'll place an order for that. So these are the reasons you might want to do this. I don't think trading is a great use case for MCPs, or something you'd want to do using natural language. But in case you feel like it, how does Claude understand Zerodha APIs? And this is where MCP comes into the picture. Model context protocol. The name itself is giving it away. It's giving the model some context around anything, and usually this context is around an application. A good example of an application being Zerodha. So Zerodha is a standard HTTP backend. They haven't really exposed it to an AI. The way to expose it to an AI is to create an MCP server, because Claude can talk to an MCP server and instruct it to do something specific. In this case, that specific thing being buying a stock of Axis or HDFC Bank. So what do we understand from this? We understand that MCPs were built for LLMs to talk to, let's say, Web2 applications, things like a makemytrip.com or a Google Drive or a GitHub, so that whenever you are on an application like this and you want to talk to a Web2 system or a standard application that isn't really an AI application, an MCP server would expose that to the LLM. Now, there are a bunch of nuances here. MCP is an Anthropic introduced protocol, and hence Claude has support for it, but other LLMs don't yet. So we still need to figure out if this becomes the primary protocol for LLMs to talk to backends. But for now, it's become very popular. In fact, there are many servers that already exist for standard applications. So if you go to github.com/mpc or model context protocol/servers, you'll see a list of servers that already exist. For example, Brave Search, web and local search using Brave Search API. So if you ever want to search not Google but Brave, or give the model context of some current news, for example, what's the weather in San Francisco, you can use Brave Search. And similarly, something like GitHub, if you want to read some code from a repository, Claude can do that thanks to the GitHub MCP server. So if you go to github.com/model context protocol/servers/tree main source GitHub, or this folder right here, this folder is the MCP server implementation of GitHub. We're trying to create the same for Zerodha. And as you can see, the list is really long. A bunch of applications or third-party services. A service like, I don't know, Atlan is a famous one, AWS is a famous one, Circle CI is a famous one, or one that you might have used until now. They've all exposed MPC servers or MCP servers. Sorry, Zerodha has not done that. Again, I don't think this is a great use case, or Zerodha needs to do it. But you'll see eventually, more and more applications do this, and hence that's what we're trying to understand. How do you create an MCP server of your own? If there is an existing backend that exists that exposes some functionality, how do you convert that functionality to something that an LLM can understand? An MCP server lets you do exactly that, and that's what we're building today. So to recap, what does MCP stand for? Model Context Protocol. What does it mean to implement a MCP server? It means to expose any functionality. For example, I might have a light switch in my room. I might want to, expose its on or off functionality to an LLM, so that I can just go over here and type, hey, can you please turn off the lights in my room? And the lights in my room would go off. That's another real world application that the LLM can now interact with, thanks to you creating a light MCP server. And similarly, what we're trying to expose today is Zerodha functionality, and hence what we're trying to create over here is the Zerodha MCP server, so that Claude can interact with the MCP server. The MCP server already has the implementation of what to do whenever a trade needs to be placed, what API to call over here, and hence by the end of it, if I type something like this, buy one stock of HDFC Bank, Claude should be able to convert it into a format that the MCP server understands. The MCP server already knows when it receives a request what to do, which is hit the Zerodha backend, and the trade is placed. You can place orders on your Zerodha account using Claude. Cool. That's part one. What is MCP? In the next section, we're going to understand various MCP servers that are available. All right, I think I've already discussed this in the last section, but there are various MCP servers that already exist. A good example of this, you can just find all of them on Model Context Protocol/servers. I've picked out the best ones that I could find. I'm unsure how much of Webflow functionality is exposed over here. Can I actually edit a Webflow page, or can I just get my existing Webflow, websites? But that's an interesting one, especially if you can edit your Webflow websites by using natural language from Claude. Another similar example on these lines is Blender MCP, which is actually, you open Blender on the right side. Blender is an application for creating 3D games and videos. So you open that on the right, open Claude on the left, talk to Claude, and it'll be able to talk to Blender and, create images, scenes, 3D graphics, objects, camera angles, things like these. So it's very hard to use Blender for most people. And a Blender MCP makes an app similar to a cursor for Blender, without adding an extra tab or changing the UI of Blender at all. Just open Claude on one side, just open Blender on the other side, and see the changes happen in real time. YouTube MCP server is great for YouTube managers who want to, I don't know, upload videos. I'm unsure if this lets you upload videos from Claude. Probably does not. But change thumbnails, change titles, get all your existing videos, so on and so forth. So if I'm a video, I don't know, if I have a YouTube channel, I go to Claude and ask it to change the title of to something more jazzy. So Claude will figure out what's the best title for my image or my video, and update it directly on YouTube. And then this one is also like super futuristic. I'm unsure if it's very useful, but MCP Server Kubernetes, which, as the name suggests, lets you talk to Claude, or lets you talk to your Kubernetes cluster via Claude. So I can, I don't know, scale up my deployments, scale them down, change a service type, I don't know, anything that you might want to do using the CLI or the command line interface or kubectl. You can use Claude to do it. And whatever are the natural language bits, for example, if I am a non-technical person, I just know that the server is down, I need to bring up more resources. Then all I have to do is go to Claude and say scale up my servers, and then Claude will figure out, okay, currently there are, let's say, 3 replicas running, and I need to scale them up to 6 replicas, things like these. So again, a lot of this is very futuristic, and unsure how much of this is actually useful in the real world, who's actually using it. But if you want to look at these implementations, they're all out there. This is a very long list that you can find here, and all of these are open source, so you can read through their code base as well. That's how I've been figuring out the Zerodha MCP server to build as well. Okay, so that's section 2. Various MCP servers that are currently available. Most of them are surprisingly written in TypeScript and not Python. But the MCP SDK exists in Python, Rust, TypeScript. You can find all of them here, but they exist in Kotlin, Java, so on and so forth. The most used ones is the TypeScript SDK. You can see that based on the stars as well. Well, the Python SDK as well. You would assume it's used a lot, but at least for all the MCP servers that I found, all of them were written in TypeScript. But TypeScript and Python would be the 2 languages that you would use to create your own MCP server. We'll be creating one using TypeScript. Let's move on to the next section. This one's not related to AI. This is simply how do you connect to Zerodha from a simple backend. Could be a Node.js backend, a Golang backend, a Rust backend. Zerodha exposes a bunch of SDKs to trade programmatically. So we'll just understand how can you trade programmatically in Zerodha. We will not do any AI bits yet. So let's move on to the next section. How do you trade programmatically in Zerodha? All right, step number 3, that's trading using APIs in Zerodha. So for that, all you have to do is go to developers.kite.trade, sign up over here. This is an independent account compared to your Zerodha account. So anyone can come and create an app on top of Zerodha. So small cases is an app on top of Zerodha that lets you create baskets. And similarly, we will create our own application, and we'll call it whatever, trade GPT or something like that. It requires your Zerodha client ID, which I hopefully blur by the time you're seeing, redirect URL and a post back URL. So here comes an important point about creating these applications. These are meant to be third-party applications that anyone can use. So if I am, if I'm small cases, if you've ever used small cases, whenever you go to small cases, you first have to log in with Zerodha. You have to Log in with Zerodha, which takes you to a Zerodha URL, and you approve this specific application. And when you approve it, you hit a small case URL. You hit something like api.smallcases.com/callback/Zerodha, something like this. This is generally how OAuth works. So we have to do something similar. We want one of our, redirect URLs, or call it a callback URL, to be hit whenever any user comes and signs up on our website. So we're creating a new application on top of Zerodha. We'll call it Trade GPT. So whenever someone comes to tradegpt.com to create a new MCP server, we're going to make them sign into Zerodha, and then Zerodha will hit our redirect URL, which for now I'm going to set it to localhost :3000, because that's where I'm hosting my application at the moment. Eventually, we'll host it on production. Actually, we might not host it on production. I'll talk about later why, because MCP currently on Claude works locally only. So actually, this might be good enough. What have I done? I have created a new Zerodha application. You can pay 2000 rupees and get more information, or better things like historic data, which means you can get the prices of various tickers, which is something you might need if you want to create a very comprehensive trading application. If you want something similar, investing, trading, and reports APIs, which means you want to allow users to go to Claude and invest on Zerodha. So in that case, they'll send requests like buy 2 stocks of Access. If this is the request that they're sending, then all you need is the personal plan, which will allow the user to invest. If you want to query historical data, if you want to get the price of Axis Bank in the last 2 days, is when you'll have to pay 2000 rupees for it. So, either is fine. I'm going with the personal one right now. And finally, the description. This is a simple GPT app. Create. This doesn't work because it says this is not a valid URL. So let me just replace this with an internet facing URL for now. And then eventually we'll see, if this is even needed. There we go. I've created a new application called Trade GPT. If I go over here, you can see I have an API key, I have an API secret, and this is my redirect URL, which, as it says over here, the URL to which user will be redirected after the login flow. So this is good. I don't know what the post back URL is. The URL where real-time order completion updates for the order placed by you will be posted. This has to be an HTTPS URL. So this seems like a webhook URL to receive some order updates, which we don't need right now. We do need this. We do need the redirect URL. So whenever a user comes, signs up on our platform, we'll take them to Zerodha. Zerodha will hit our local host for now on this specific route. And this is where we'll register the user's tokens so that we have access to their Zerodha account. We can place trades on their behalf. Cool. That's all you need on developers.kite.trade. You've been able to create an API key and an API secret. Next steps are creating a simple Node.js application or a bun application where you're actually placing some orders. So let's do that really quickly. GitHub Zerodha JS SDK. So Zerodha has a Rust SDK, Golang SDK, and JavaScript SDK. The JS SDK is what we're dealing with today. So let's quickly create a fresh Bun.js application. Zerodha trade is what I'm going to call it. Bun init to initialize an empty Bun.js project, but feel free to initialize Node.js, doesn't really matter. Let me open this in Cursor. This is an empty Bun project. So if I open index.ts, you see nothing right now. Let's try to look at their JavaScript SDK. So this is the Zerodha JavaScript SDK. This is what you can use to trade programmatically on Zerodha. Let me copy the boilerplate code that they have. And if you look through it, it has a few things. Number one, it has an import of Kite Connect at the top. So let me add Kite Connect as one of the dependencies here. Then it hard codes API key, API secret, and a third thing called the request token. The request token is sort of important. So this is like the user specific token. The thing is that you're building something on top of Zerodha that hopefully multiple people will use in the future. Abhi ke liye you're restricting it to your own account, but hopefully in the future tradegpt.com becomes a thing and everyone comes and gives you access to their Zerodha accounts. This request token is the token for their Zerodha account. It gives you power to place trades on their Zerodha account. Abhi ke liye, whenever you create an application like this, you have to give your Zerodha client ID. And by default, the API is restricted to a single Zerodha user ID. So by default, you can't do this. You can't create an application on top of Zerodha. You will have to email them and show them legitimacy. And if they like your product, only then will they allow you to make your application run for everyone. Abhi ke liye, it will only run on your own Zerodha account, which is जिसका client ID आपने यहाँ दिया हुआ है, the client ID that you have given over here. So the question really is, where do you get this request token from? How can I get my own account's request token? API key, we know we can get from here. API secret, I can click on show API secret, copy and paste it over here. Where do I get the request token from? And the answer is, this is standard OAuth flow if you've done it. OAuth, if you know what OAuth is, login with Google, login with Facebook, if you've ever done that on a website. What happens is you go to facebook.com or google.com, you select a yes over there, and then Google hits back one of your redirect URLs. If you remember, we have given a redirect URL over here, localhost /trade/redirect. So the way this will work is we have to somehow get redirected to Zerodha from our tradegpt.com, approve access to our account or approve access to TradeGPT, and then get redirected to abhi ke liye localhost /trade/redirect. In the future, something like api.tradegpt.com/trade/redirect. So this third thing that you see over here is going to come from Zerodha whenever a user approves our application. We'll see that flow very soon. But assuming we have the user's request token and we have our API key and API secret, then things become very simple. You initialize an instance of Kite Connect, which is the name of their SDK. And if you look at the boilerplate code that they've given, we call an init function. If you look at the init function, it calls a generate session function and then a get profile function. The generate session function it's doing nothing. It's getting a short access token, a small lived access token, given the request token. It is calling kc.generate session. It's generating a short lived session given this request token and this API secret. Whatever response comes back from here, usme there is an access token, which is what you can use to send requests to Zerodha to trade on that user's account. So this line of code generates a new session. Think of it like a small access key, and then that access key is set on the Kite Connect instance. So kc.set access token, response.access token. After this, you can call functions to trade on the user's account, or in this case, what have they done? They've called get profile, which does what? It simply calls kc.get profile. That will get the user's profile information, their name, their phone number, their Zerodha account ID, so on and so forth. So this get profile function call is what needs to get replaced with something like a cancel order or a modify order or a place order to actually place an order to buy a specific stock. So eventually we will see that this SDK makes it very easy to place orders. But before you place an order for a user, the difficult bit is, where do you get the request token from? And then you have to generate a short-lived token, which I'm assuming is a very simple function call over here. Okay. Now comes the difficult part. How do you generate the request token? If you have done OAuth before, this should be fairly obvious then. But basically, if you look at KC over here, you can actually log kc.get login URL. And this was a little hard to figure out for me as well, because their docs did not represent this very well. But if I log kc.get login URL, and let me quickly run it. Bun index.ts. You'll notice it logs kite.zerodha.com/connect/login ?API key equal to something. So basically, जो API key थी, that's just added in front of a standard login URL for Zerodha. If I go to this login URL, notice the page that I reach. It says authorize trade GPT. So does this look similar to login with Google on a different website? When you go to a website, click on login with Google, you reach google.com, it asks you to approve that application, right? Something very similar is happening over here. Okay, from our website, tradegpt.com, whenever the user clicks on login with Zerodha, we'll send them to this URL. They will approve us, hopefully, because they trust us. They want to use our application Trade GPT. So, Zerodha is giving them all the warnings over here. Okay, this application will now be able to see your profile details and place orders on your behalf. Are you sure you want to do that? And when you click authorize, is when Zerodha will send us back that user's request token. They are sending us back कि Harkirat का request token ये है. Now you have access to place orders on Harkirat's behalf. So that's how you grab the request token from a user. Abhi ke liye, unfortunately, we can only grab the redirect the token for yourself basically. But eventually, if you want, you can mail folks at Zerodha and have access for everyone and create a globally available application where everyone can use it. Abhi ke liye only you can use it. So the easiest way for you to get your request token is just go to the login URL, approve your account, and copy it from here. Of course, there are other ways, by which I mean you create a website where it says login with Zerodha, you click on login with Zerodha, you reach the redirect page, so on and so forth. You expose something on port 3000 on the machine and go from there. Abhi ke liye, since the request token is right here, I'm going to copy it, paste it over here. And now I have access to Harkirat's account, which is my own account for now. I have API key, I have API secret, I have request token. If you look at the code, it generates a short-lived session. It calls the getProfile function, which calls kc.getProfile, and then logs the profile on the screen. If I run bun_index.ts now, you will notice my profile gets logged, which includes my user ID, the user type, my email, so on and so forth. So even the session gets logged over here, which is the short-lived session that we have created. So that's how you can call get profile. But what do we want? Do we want to get profile or do we want to place an order? We want to place an order. What kind of order do we want to place? So what are the inputs to this function? Let's see. The first input is variety, which can be one of these. Do you want to create a regular order? Do you want to create a aftermarket order? Order, by which I mean, when the markets have closed. In our case, we want to send a regular order. So what does connect of regular variety underscore regular stand for or resolve to? It resolves to regular. So the first input I can give over here is I want to send a regular order. I don't want to send the aftermarket order, for example. And the second inputs are what exchange do you want to place this order on? Let's say I want to place this on NSE. What are the other inputs to the function? Trading symbol. So this is the stock symbol, which I would assume for something like HDFC Bank is HDFCBANK. So something like this. What are the other inputs? Transaction type. Do I want to buy or do I want to sell? Let's say I want to buy. Quantity, let's say I want to buy one stock of HDFC. Product, I think this will be CNC. I could be wrong. What does it have here by default? Quick, or let's say regular. Yeah, it is a long-term error. So you can either create a intraday order or a long-term order. We want to create a long-term order, so that's CNC. What else? Order type. We want to place a market order. If you understand the difference between market and limit orders, if not, that's fine as well. Just select market over here. This should hopefully this should be enough code to buy HDFC Bank programmatically on my Zerodha account. So this is my Zerodha account. I can go over here, open this, and then click on buy. Or now I can simply run bun_index.ts and hopefully it places an order. And it says invalid API key or access token. Did I change anything? Token is invalid or expired. So let me quickly re-log in even though this shouldn't have expired so quickly. But let me quickly grab another request token and try it one more time. So this is my Zerodha dashboard. Let me open this on the right. Let me open this on the left. Let me try to run oneindex.ts. As you can see, the order has been placed on Zerodha programmatically, by which I mean, whatever would have happened by clicking on a few buttons, same thing happened over here. Without clicking any buttons, it happened, programmatically through the Node.js SDK. Similarly, if I want, I can sell, let's say, one of these two HDFC Bank orders. So if I run this again, token is valid or expired. Is this a one-time token? I don't think that is true. All right, I stand corrected, folks. This is not a short-term access token. The access token most probably is long-term. The request token is a one-time use request token. So when I call kc.generate session with the request token, जो मुझे access token वहाँ से मिल रहा है, the access token that I'm getting is something I should cache or keep in my database eventually. क्योंकि वो चीज़ long term में I can keep reusing. I can't keep reusing this request token to generate session again and again. So let's try that. Let me do a let access token equal to an empty string for now. And let me just log the access token over here. Let me re-log in to Zerodha. Let me grab the request token again, which is this one right here. Let me paste it. And now I have logged the access token over here in the generate session function. If I do a oneindex.ts, this is what it looks like. An order also got placed. I just heard a pop sound. This sell order right here, because I changed this to sell, right? And let me just hardcode the access token. Let me comment the request token. I think we don't need any of this anymore. We just need to just remove the whole thing actually. kc dot set access token, the hard-coded access token that we have, that we generated in the last run from the request token that I had. Let me remove this as well. I think this should be good enough. I could be wrong. Let's try to buy it again. So change this to a buy. This is what the full code looks like. I don't even need a API secret anymore because I'm not verifying or generating the access token anymore. Let me do a oneindex.ts. Order has been placed. I heard a pop sound. You can also see, or you can't see, I'm probably on top of the notifications. Let me move this here. Let me move cursor on the right. Let me run oneindex.ts again. And as you can see, the order gets placed. If I change this to a sell, you get the idea. The sell order will get executed. So what did we learn in this, last 2 minutes? Is that this is actually very close to OAuth flow, by which I mean the initial token that you get is what you verify the backend with, and then you generate an access token that you can use for a while. So I've hard-coded that access token. Hopefully you understand this. If not, just rewind a little bit. But I'm just going to keep this access token hard-coded. This is my account's access token, so I can keep trading on my account as long as I have access to this. Unsure if this has an expiry. I would assume not. But if it does have an expiry, then we'll have to keep refreshing it from time to time. Okay, I can just check actually kc.refresh. Just for invalidation. So I think we should be fine, but it might happen that this access token, gets revoked in a day or so, or, has some sort of an expiry. Cool. To recap, in this section, we saw how can you programmatically trade on Zerodha. Step 1, we created a new app on developers.kite.trade. I gave it a name. I got an access key and an API key and an API secret for it. I used the API key and API secret to generate a access token for my personal Zerodha account. I have hard coded that access token over here. And now I can simply call kc.setAccessToken to set the access token for all the future requests that I'm sending. And what are the requests that I'm sending? There's just one. We need to replace this to place, or I can just, move everything here. this is all that we're doing. I'm calling an init function, which is first setting the access token and then simply placing the order. A regular order on NSC for HDFC Bank, it's a sell order with one quantity, and the order type is a market order type. Cool. Hopefully that's easy to digest. How do you programmatically create orders on Zerodha? Now put whatever algorithms you want around. If you're a, I don't know, heavy trader or intraday trader, do whatever you want, even though this is nothing. Like, you'd not write trading code in Node.js if you're ever trying to trade. But hopefully you understand what's happening over here. The most difficult bit was digesting the fact that there's an access token. There's no username and password. The reason for that is this is standard OAuth flow, and you might want to let other people all around the world use your application in the future. And hence it makes sense to do this. But even if you don't understand that part, that's mostly fine, as long as you understand how we're using the SDK and how do we create an MCP on top of it. So the next section, given that we have this much code that is able to place orders on my Zerodha account, the next section is going to actually create an MCP server that exposes the trade functionality to the LLM. So this is where we'll have to understand what are tools and resources. We'll have to understand how MCP works. Nothing too crazy. And once that happens, hopefully Claude is able to place orders on my Zerodha account. So we'll keep this code handy. Probably I'll create a new file called trade.ts. I'll take all of this code, I'll move it to trade.ts, and I'll export async function called place order, which will, let's say, take the symbol as the input, which is a string, and the quantity as an input, which is a number. And those are the things that we'll pass in over here. Everything else, type also. Type, which will be either buy or sell. So we'll take these as an input and expose this generic function that eventually we need to expose to the LLM. How does that happen? We'll see very soon. But typically, I have a function called place order, and I can just call that function again and again. Let's say I call it with what is another stock over here. Let's say ITC. I want to buy one quantity unless it's too expensive. That seems fine. And I want to place a buy order. So if I do this much, and I of course import place order from /trade, hopefully when I do a bunindex.ts, gives me an error. It says can't find function init. Let me remove it. When I run bunindex.ts, it buys an ITC stock for me. If I type sell over here, do the same thing, and hopefully it sells the ITC stock for me. So I'm able to trade programmatically, and with a very simple high level function. I can also do this if I want. I can buy 3 stocks of HDFC Bank, one after the other. So I have access to a high level function that's able to slowly place multiple orders. Question is, how do you expose this functionality to an LLM? That is what we're getting into next. Let's create our own MCP server. All right, on to the fourth section, creating an MCP server that exposes the trade functionality to an LLM. We've been able to create the trade functionality, but we now need to make sure that an MCP client or something like Claude can talk to the trade functionality, can execute the trade functionality. And this is where the model context protocol comes into the picture. If there is a backend of Zerodha that you can call a bunch of functions on, you can directly call it from a front end, or you can create another server in front of it. Think of it like a proxy server. Think of it like a bridge between an LLM and your external provider. External provider could be anything. It is Zerodha in this case. It could be Slack, it could be GitHub, it could be Google Drive, it could be Zapier, it could be any backend, any company that exists. You're just creating a layer on top of it, and you're letting the LLM know, giving the LLM context, okay, bhai, this is how you are going to call functions on this service. So that is what an MCP server does. You can write it in any language. It's just a specification, just like HTTP is a specification. You can create an HTTP server in any language. MCP is a specification. It describes how should you translate, what should you expose from here, how does the LLM talk to what is being exposed from here, things like these. But it can be written in any language, be it C, Rust, Python, Golang, JavaScript. We'll be writing it in JavaScript, and for that, there is the MCP TypeScript SDK. Again, SDK stands for Software Development Kit. It just makes it a little easy for you to create MCP servers. You can still create them without the SDK. You can create them in any other language of your choice. The way it will work is you have to expose something called tools from the MCP server. So let's just look at the boilerplate code and try to understand what's happening. First step is just adding at model context protocol slash SDK as a dependency. So let me quickly do that. One add at model context protocol slash SDK. If you look at the quick start, what does it do? Number one, it imports a few things from the SDK. It imports something called as the stdio server transport. We'll come to what transports are and what is this stdio server transport. It imports MCP server and resource template. Ignore this for now. The only thing we need to focus on is this export that comes as MCP server. Think of this very similar to Express, just like you import Express from Express and create an HTTP server. You're importing MCP server from this MCP server SDK. You create a new instance of the MCP server, you give it a name, you give it a version, fairly simple stuff. Initialize a new instance of the MCP server class. And then here comes the magic. If you look at it, what does it say? It says server.tool. So here comes the first jargon for MCP, tools. We'll read through what they are. But if you try to understand it from first principles, what does it say? It says, I am trying to expose an addition tool to the LLM. What is the name of the tool? It's called add. Or what is the title of the tool? What does it do? It adds something, hopefully numbers. What are the inputs that it takes? It takes two inputs, A and B. And both of them are numbers. Now, if you've dealt with Zord before, then you understand what this is. What is z.number? What is z.number? If you've not done Zord before, it's just a way to describe your schema in TypeScript. Zord is a library in TypeScript or even JavaScript that lets you do runtime validation. Runtime validation means it lets you check the types at runtime. Runtime means when the code is actually executing. So this z.number means that A needs to be a number, B needs to be a number. If it's a string, it will be a z.string. If it's an object, it will be a z.object, so on and so forth. Zord is not a MCP specific library. It's a general library used for validation in TypeScript. It's similar to Pydantic in Python if you've used it. It just lets you verify the types of the inputs. The inputs here being A and B. So this will make sure, whenever the LLM is calling, the LLM knows it needs to pass two things, A and B, to the MCP server, and then this is the function that actually does what it's supposed to do, or do whatever this specific tool is supposed to do. This is the addition tool, which is supposed to do what it's pretty much supposed to do nothing, just supposed to add two numbers, which is exactly what happens over here. If you look at the final thing that this function returns, it returns contents which is of type text, and the final output is nothing but A plus B converted to a string. So let's just focus on this much of the code. Try to create our very first tool, try to test it in Claude, and then slowly build a trading tool on top of it. If you understand just creating the addition tool, then maybe let's try to create a subtraction tool. If you're able to create both of them, then creating a trade tool or a buy tool or a sell tool is a piece of cake. Let's copy this code. Let's keep this handy, the place order import. Let's not change it. Let me just remove the usage for now. And this is what the boilerplate code looks like. Import MCP server from the SDK. Const server equal to new MCP server, and then server.tool add, which means I'm add two numbers, something like this. What is this tool doing? It is allowing the LLM to add two numbers. Now LLMs can add numbers themselves as well, even though they're not supposed to do that. They're next word predictors, right? So if you give them a very big number, they'll get a little confused. They might throw out random things at you. But generally, if you add 2 plus 2, it will be able to spit out 4 without doing any math. They've been trained enough to be able to do basic mathematics themselves. But if it was a more complicated function like a factorial, that's where it'll get a little tricky for an LLM to predict. It makes sense to do mathematics on a JavaScript server rather than asking the LLM to predict the factorial of, let's say, 200. So for those things, you should introduce these tools. For example, let me introduce another tool here called factorial of a number, which takes just a single number as an input a and is supposed to return the factorial. So what can I do over here? The function will have one input a, and this function should calculate the factorial of a. So let answer equal to 1 for let I equal to 0, I less than equal to a I plus plus, answer into equal to I, not 0 I equal to 2, and then return content type text equal to string of answer. I think just answer should also work, or answer plus this is fine, this should work. Okay. So this is me introducing one tool, this is me introducing another tool. I see a red squiggly here, seems like I've missed something. I do need to convert it to a string, so TypeScript will not be happy. To make TypeScript happy, I had to convert the final output from a number to a string. Cool. I have two tools that I have exposed. This is not a buy tool for Zerodha. This is not a sell tool for Zerodha. We'll eventually introduce those. We don't want to do very basic mathematics. That's not what our MCP server is supposed to do. But just for testing, just to see how does this work with Claude, we're sort of, introducing two very simple tools right now. Calculate the factorial, add two numbers. Can Claude do this itself? Yes. LLMs are smart enough to, if you give it a 2 plus 2, it'll spit out 4. But more complicated, if you ask it, I don't know, if you give it a very big mathematical expression, it will not be able to calculate it. It might be able to, but you get the idea. It's not doing mathematics. It's just predicting the next letter, which may or may not be the right answer. This for sure will be the right answer because this is mathematics running on a server. Cool. Okay. The last thing is there are a few ways to connect to an MCP server. MCP is very experimental at the moment. So, usually you're running it locally. And if you want to interact with it, using, something like Claude, you're running Claude locally as well. So MCP server runs locally on your machine. Claude runs locally on your machine. You can run MCP server somewhere on AWS and run Claude, locally and connect to it via an HTTP transport in that case. But if you're running it locally, अगर आप ये server localhost 3000 पे चला रहे हो, if this is running on localhost 3000, let's say, or not even that, it's an index.ts file that you're just spawning, or an index.ts file that Claude can just spawn, then you can use a different type of transport. So what does the term transport mean here? Transport means कि ये जो tools हैं, these tools that you have created, how are you exposing them to the LLM? Do you want the LLM to talk to it via standard input output, which means is Claude going to spawn the MCP server itself? Or do you want the MCP server hosted somewhere on the internet, in which case you will not use an STD IO server transport, you'll use some sort of an HTTP transport or, a WebSocket transport, because the MCP server and Claude don't exist on the same machine. So अगर वो same machine पे ही है, then you can make Claude spawn the MCP server. Literally, when you start Claude on your machine locally, the Claude desktop application, it will spawn the MCP server ka code. It will start the server and talk to it via standard input output. But if you don't want that, if you want this is hosted on the internet somewhere, then basically these two lines of code will change, and you will not have a STDIO server output or transport. You will have some HTTP transport, and that's how the server will connect to the client. But in our case, we're doing everything locally, and hence this STD server transport is enough, or STDIO server transport is enough. What that means is that whenever the MCP client starts, which in this case, whenever Claude is starting, it's talking to the MCP server via standard input output, which means they exist on the same machine. Okay, so let's add this as well. Let's import this from model context protocol /SDK server /stdio.js. And that is it. We have introduced tool number 1. We have introduced tool number 2. If you want, you can introduce, you probably from first principles understand what you need to do next. Buy a stock. What would buy a stock take as an input? Harkirat, that will take the stock ka name as an input. So, which will be a z.string, and the quantity that the user wants to buy, which will be a z.number. And what does the function take as input? the same things. So stock and quantity. And yahan pe I need to place the order to buy the stock, this much quantity, buy. And then I can return something like stock has been bought. What am I missing here? And maybe another tool to sell a stock, where I'm just calling place order with sell. So do you understand what's happening? This is standard functionality that already exists in Zerodha, already exists in maybe Zapier, in Slack. We're just exposing it as a tool to the LLM, so the LLM understands, अच्छा, this is what is happening over there, and these are the inputs I need to send it. तो इससे LLM थोड़ा aware हो जाता है. The LLM is a little more aware कि अच्छा, I need to call this specific tool to sell a stock, and these are the inputs that I have to give: stock as a string, quantity as a number. So the LLM sends the right request over here. We execute the order in Zerodha. The LLM gets a response and is able to sort of talk to Zerodha indirectly. It by default doesn't know what to call to sell a stock. We are giving it context. If you want to sell a stock, give these inputs. I'll take care of actually placing the order. So now we have, that's enough to create an MCP server. We have an MCP server where we have 4 tools exposed. What is a tool? It's the LLM. It's something that the LLM has access to do something on a server, to actually execute a task on a server, to actually, it's closer to a post request because you're actually doing something on a server. So a tool is actually doing something on a server, is basically executing a task that you would want on a day-to-day basis from a Slack, a GitHub, a Google Drive, or in this case, Zerodha. Which is why these are a little weird of a task. They pretty much are doing, they're still doing something, but they're not really interacting with a third-party service. That's fine. ठीक है. Tool 1 exposed, tool 2 exposed, tool 3 exposed, tool 4 exposed, all exposed via standard input output. Question is, how do I start the MCP client? Can I go to claude.com or claude.ai and do it? The answer is no. Right now, this is only available on the Claude desktop application. So unfortunately, you have to first install the desktop application, or you can go to Cursor and do it also, or you can go to Windsurfer and do it also. A bunch of these, call them AI apps. Cursor is an AI app. Claude is an AI app. Bunch of them now have support for MCP, but Claude Web does not, because as I said, you have to spawn this locally. The web app can't really spawn a new MCP server, right? So you first have to install the Claude app locally. Once you do, there are a few steps to go through, which was a little hard for me to figure out. So make sure you're following them. Number 1 is opening the Claude application locally. Once that happens, you have to flip on developer mode. This part is important. So make sure you select, I think, help and then flip on developer mode, or window and then flip on developer mode, one of these two. Only then will you be able to see the same things as I do. Only when developer mode is on, can you click on Claude and then click on settings, and you will see a section called developer where you can start to edit the MCP config. What do I mean by start to edit the MCP config? Make Claude aware that there is an MCP server to start over here. So you can click on edit config over here, and it will take you to a file that you can now edit. Let's open that file in Cursor, and yahan pe you can add a list of MCP servers that exist. So let's go through the docs. Let's click on get started, and it will share here MCP servers mein. I want to introduce my very first MCP server that we want Claude to spawn. This one's, let's say, called trade, where the command that we have to run is what are we starting eventually? We're starting bun, right? So bun, and then what are the arguments that we're sending? It's going to be closer to index.ts, but we have to give the actual path to index.ts. What's the actual path? It is this whole path / index.ts. So /users /Harkirat /project /Zerodha trade /index.ts. That's the file that I want to start. That's the first argument to the command. And unfortunately, Claude is not able to discover bun either. So you have to give the relative path to bun. So you can run the command which bun on your machine. That will give you the exact path where bun exists. That is the path that you have to give. That is the command that you have to give. You can't simply write bun. If you do, you'll see an error. The error would be it's not able to discover bun. So give the relative path to bun. Give the relative path to the file that's starting the MCP server, and you're good to go. Itne mein, now Claude is aware that there is an MCP server it needs to start. Now if I restart Claude, if I close everything and restart Claude, you'll see there is a tool thingy that is created over here. In fact, you can go to Claude, go to settings, go to developer mode, and you will see Trade is an application that is running. It's an MCP server that is running that was started by Claude. It was spawned by Claude. In fact, if you look at the logs, it's very easy to see Claude desktop is somewhere written in JavaScript because it calls a spawn function to actually spawn the MCP server. It is running, and you get access to these 4 MCP tools. What does it say? 4 MCP tools available. Add to numbers, buy a stock, factorial of a number, sell a stock. So, actually that's enough. You have access to 4 tools. What is a tool? These are the 4 tools that we had created. Add to numbers, factorial of a number, buy a stock, sell a stock. So now, if I write over here, and let me open Zerodha on the right because it might just work in the first go. Open Zerodha on the right or left, maybe cursor on the right. Can you buy a stock of IETC for me? And it throws an error. It says tools, tool definition or name, string should match pattern something. Buy a stock should be string, quantity should be number. That looks fine. Tools, names. Oh. Buy dash stock. The name of the tool shouldn't have a string in it. They should have better error messages here. But this is like highly experimental, which is why it's fine. So let's remove the spaces from everywhere. Add to numbers, factorial, buy stock, sell stock. Let's restart Claude. Let's open Zerodha on the left and let's write, can you buy a stock of ITC for me? And now Claude is thinking, and hopefully it will figure out that I have access to 4 tools. And one of these tools can actually let us purchase the stock. But it's not using it directly. Please use the buy stock tool to buy it. I would have hoped it would be smart enough to use it directly. Not going to. Yeah. So now, as you can see, it's asking me allow tool from trade local. Whether or not I want this tool to be executed, the answer is yes. Allow for this chat, and as you can see, the ITC stock was bought over here. Very surprising, it happened in the first go. I appreciate interest in buying this tool, but I should clarify that while there is buy stock function available in the interface, not connected to actual financial markets. It's actually a real function. So you have to provide some more context to the LLM so that it knows this is actually a real function that's actually placing an order on Zerodha. Can you sell the same stock again? Question mark. And the ITC stock is sold by the LLM. The question really is, how do we tell the LLM this? A few things. We need to, people are dumb. They might write, ITCC. They might write, I don't know, HDFC rather than writing HDFC Bank. They might not know the exact name of the symbol over here. So we need to figure that out. How do we give the LLM context? These are the stocks that you have available. That's one. And 2 is the LLM right now feels these are fake trades, but they aren't. So we need to tell them these are real trades. I think that we can do by, there you go. There is a description that we can pass as the second argument. So let's do that. buys the stock on Zerodha exchange for the user. It executes a real order for the user on the exchange. Let's give it a lot of context around what the buy stock tool is doing. And then the same thing for the sell stock tool, sells the stock on the Zerodha exchange. For the user, it executes a real order to sell the stock for the user. Something like this. Now let's restart Claude and let's see, do we see more helpful messages this time? And we can just keep iterating from here. But even before this, it is failing now. So I'll have to debug what's up here. Oh, there's some in 44. I forgot a comma. Try it one more time. Restart Claude. No errors this time. Open this on the left, open Zerodha on the right. Buy HDFC or buy ITC stock for me. One quantity should be good for now. And notice I've written ONE and not one. But the LLM will be smart enough to figure out that the input it needs to give to the tool is going to be the number one, and not, ONE. I noticed that you asked me to buy a stock. While I have access to function appears to be a stock purchase, I want to be careful. Please proceed. So it's just pretty surprising. It's, being wary of the fact that this will actually create a trade. So should you do it, should you not do it? Great. I think that's something that should happen. Sell one stock of Zerodha. Oh, sorry, not Zerodha. Let's say HDFC Bank. Now here is where, it gets tricky. Will it be able to figure out? It did, the symbol, but what if I write HDFC, then it probably won't be able to figure out the symbol and it will crash. So we'll have to give it more context as to the symbols that we have available. There are easy ways to do it. I'll talk through it iske baad, but I'm just excited to play. So let's see what all stocks exist in Zerodha. There is Axis Bank. So let me try something like this. Buy a stock of, or buy 4 stocks of Axis Bank for me, or maybe 2. And as you can see, I heard a pop and 2 Axis Bank stocks were bought. This time, it thankfully did not ask for a warning. What else? Let's say Asian Paints. So buy 2 stocks of Asian Paint. And it says I do not have enough money. How much is an Asian Paint stock for? I'm assuming a lot then. 2,400 rupees. What all orders do I have open? I don't have enough. Seems like I've placed a lot of orders. So let's sell. Now I want to introduce other things, right? I should introduce a sell all tool that sells everything, so that whenever I'm on Claude and I pass something like sell all my current holdings, it should just call the sell all holdings tool, and which would cancel all the orders over here. So is there a way to do that? Is there a place order? Let's see. kc.cancel all dot sell dot cancel get. Yeah, we'll probably have to get all the stocks and then do it, which is fine. There should be a get portfolio function. So kc.get holdings. Yeah, there is one. So const, let's do this, export async function get holdings, which will const holdings equal to await kc.get holdings. And what does holdings look like? It's probably an array. So await it const all holdings equal to empty string, and holdings dot map holding. What does it have as an input? Get holdings retrieves the list of equity holding, which is exactly what we want. Trading symbol, and then hopefully quantity and price. So why do I have two awaits here? Holdings.map holding all holdings plus equal to this is the stock that we have. So holding dot trading symbol, and quantity is going to be quantity holding dot quantity, and current price holding dot price, or last price would probably be it. And then let's simply return this from here, return all holdings. And now that I have a get holdings function that returns all of my holdings as a string, I can actually introduce another tool called show portfolio that shows my complete portfolio in Zerodha, and it should not require any inputs, and should simply return await get holdings, and that should be it. Now I've introduced a fourth tool called show portfolio that will give the LLM all of my portfolio. Let's see what the LLM does with it. So let me close Claude, let me reopen Claude. Let me write something like, as you can see, we have 5 tools now. One of them is show portfolio. What does my Zerodha portfolio look like? And hopefully it's going to use the right tool. There you go. So I'm going to allow for this chat. Sent a request, got a response. Object is what it got. And why is that? Await get holdings. All right, there were 2 problems, guys. Problem number 1, I was not setting the access token here. Unfortunately, I'd done it inside the function. So I moved it outside globally. We're good to go now. The access token is being set here. So it's valid here as well in the get holdings function. Number 2, I was getting the holdings. What I need to get are the positions. They're different things. So let me rename this to get positions. We're doing a kc.get positions over here that will show me all of my current positions that I'm holding. That includes the number of stocks that I have, the quantity of the stocks that I have, and their current price, which will give me the PNL and so on and so forth. Cool. If I go back here, let me rename this to get positions. Let's see if that does it. That should probably do it. Can you show me my portfolio? Moment of truth. I think that should do it. I spoke too soon. It seems like I did it. I have a bunch of logs, which is why this is happening. But it is showing me I have 2 Axis Bank stocks, 3 HDFC Bank stocks, 1 ITC stock. I can tell it, can we get rid of HDFC Bank, please? And hopefully it sends a sell order for 3 HDFC Bank stocks. Let's see, does that happen or not? Seems like it. So do you understand where the LLM is helpful here? Can you show me my portfolio now? The way it's helpful is because it understands. All I had to tell it was get rid of it, and it was able to understand I have 3 stocks, and sent a request to remove all of them. Now it says I have only Axis Bank and ITC left. We see a bunch of logs on the right, probably because of this. Anytime you log over here, there's an error that pops up on Claude. So make sure you get rid of all the logs. Now let me get rid of access as well, please. That'll get rid of access and so on and so forth. I'll help you get rid of Axis Bank shares. And if you heard the pop already, if you didn't, as you can see, the sell order has been placed over here. In the end, we're only left with whatever is left in my portfolio. Please sell it as well. And I don't have too much. I only have one ITC stock. So hopefully it first sends a request to check. Yeah, show portfolio. That will return an ITC. It says, I see you have one ITC stock. It sells my ITC stock. And that's what you see on the left. I've successfully sold your remaining one share of ITC. Your portfolio should now be completely liquidated. Cool. So now I have, no more positions. If I refresh, as you can see, quantity is 0 everywhere, 0, 0, 0. So I'm not holding any other positions. I'm back to my original equity of some 9.7k INR. So hopefully you understand what happened here. I was able to talk to Zerodha through Claude. Why? Because I created an MCP server for Claude, which isn't too much. It's just 65 lines of code over here and 35 lines of code over here. It's like 100 lines of code. What is happening is I have created a bunch of tools. Actually, you don't even need this and this. So it's actually less than maybe 60 lines of code. I've introduced 4 tools over here: buy stock, sell stock, show portfolio, 3 of them, sorry. Buy stock, sell stock, and show portfolio. Given this description, the LLM sort of understands, okay, this is what Harkirat is trying to do, or this is what this tool is trying to do. So whenever I go to the LLM and say, whatever, whenever I go to the LLM and say, buy a stock of HDFC Bank, it understands it has access to 5 tools, and it just uses one of those tools to do its thing. Cool. Buy a stock of HDFC Bank. I notice. Oh, fine, please do it. So it keeps sort of giving me warning before buying a stock, which I think is fine. But once you get away from the warning and give it the go ahead to do it, as you can see, it was able to, whatever, in this case, buy a stock of one HDFC Bank. If I go over here, it's just getting my portfolio. It's still giving me a warning, basically, in this case. Buy one stock, don't worry about it, do it. And this time it will probably buy. Yeah, there you go. Allow this for chat, and as you can see, an order was placed to buy one stock of HDFC Bank. So hopefully that's simple enough. Few things to add would be, I don't know, a lot of things. Mutual funds, getting access to all of those. I'm sure Zerodha exposes that. We only have 3 tools right now, fairly rudimentary ones. Though would urge you to go a little deeper in case you feel like it. Like, I don't think anyone will use this specific MCP server. I don't think there's too much sense to talking to an LLM to actually buy or sell stocks. You might go even fancy and say, let's make AI trade. I think that's even worse because, the latency matters a lot if you're trading, especially if you're intraday trading. So I wouldn't recommend in either of the cases that you use an LLM interface to interact with your stock balance. Maybe for extremely old people, it makes sense, who find it very hard to navigate Zerodha, to check their portfolio, talk to the LLM, and, buy a stock, sell a stock. For everyone else, I don't think it makes too much sense. But, you never know. People might use it. Hopefully, that was an insightful video. Hopefully, you learned something new. Let me know if you are building an MCP and which one. If you're not building it, which are the ones that you're whose code base you're going through, which do you think will actually be used? Which unfortunately I can't find one. Maybe Blender is a great one. Webflow is a great one. Framer is a great one. Whatever applications are really hard to use, if they're exposed by MCPs, I think SaaS, basically, a lot of SaaS can be exposed by MCPs because people don't want to open Blender and edit things there. People want a very clean chat interface in which I can talk to the chat interface and Blender just does its thing. So I think these very expensive, heavy GUI applications is where there is some use case for MCPs. Unsure if trading is one of them. But time will tell. With that, we'll end it. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.